The African National Congress in KwaZulu-Natal will this weekend elect its new leadership. Premier Sihle Zikalala, Finance MEC Nomusa Dube-Ncube and businessman Sandile Zungu are some of the candidates in the running for the chairperson position. For analysis, I'm joined now by political analyst Dr. Fikile Vilakazi. Dr. Vilakazi, very good morning to you. Thank you for your time. After a series of postponements, the conference is finally set to get underway. The ANC goes to this conference essentially licking its wounds after losing 18 municipalities to the IFP during last year's municipal elections. What's your assessment of the political climate? Are we likely to see those deep divisions of 2017 this time around?
Good morning, Paul, and good morning to viewers. The climate here in KwaZulu-Natal as the build-up to the conference is happening is quite a positive one from what we are seeing and observing, particularly within the African National Congress structures. You know, there has been a lot of work in terms of preparation within the regions, within branches, branches having their own general meetings, preparing their delegates as well to come and attend the conference. The leadership also from national level has landed in the province to oversee the process. The Provincial Executive Committee has also done its work in terms of plenary to ensure that all processes are in place. So we are hoping that perhaps the start will happen smoothly tomorrow on Friday. But in terms of the divisions, just within the politics of the African National Congress, one anticipates that I think they will deepen themselves more than what we have seen. And the reason being that you are seeing a number of people really creating varied slates, which is something that you haven't seen before, particularly in the previous provincial conference. Like you've said, with the chairpersonship position, we've got about 5 slates, people who are contesting, and these are all strong candidates. And that should tell us, how the level of division is widening within the Congress. People really wanting change, people wanting an alternative way of doing things, compared to the way things are now.
I suppose it's a balance of forces that will be playing out in what is essentially expected to be a tough contest for the provincial leadership and Sihle Zikalala, who we know that during the previous conference was elected unopposed. It's now believed that at least 6 others, you mentioned some, ANC members have their eye on the top position. What are the dynamics at play in the gear-up and the build-up to the contestation?
Well, I mean, one of the dynamics is that is being brought by Sandile Zungu. Sandile has been in consultation with the former President Jacob Zuma, and he speaks about this openly. He also, has been trying to speak to former Minister Ncube, just to get advice in terms of what are some of the things, in the direction that the organization should be taking. And that obviously should tell us that dynamic is about the Radical Economic Transformation faction deepening itself here in the province. Similarly with Umama Nomusa Dube-Ncube, who has been speaking recently also in the public to say it is very, very important and paramount for the province to consult leaders that have traveled this journey before, leaders that have led the province before, mentioning similar names as well of the former President Jacob Zuma and Ncube. So that is the dynamic that is coming up, which is really deepening the Radical Economic Transformation agenda. And the second dynamic is that of Sandile Zungu, again, as a businessman, coming up to contest political space, to contest, elections. It's a dynamic in a sense that it then shows where does the ANC lie when it comes to a neoliberal agenda that is economic in nature. Are we seeing a trend where we're going to see more businessmen leading politics, for example? What does that mean in terms of the balance of politics and business, the role of elites, in leading political organizations, and of course, and then that juxtapose that with the needs of the poor on the ground, with the needs of citizens on the ground, where there is always going to be a contestation of profit and service delivery for people. So there's that dynamic around just the body of Sandile Zungu that is emerging. And the third dynamic, Mpo, is a gender one. is a feminist one, right? It's a question of bodies like Umama Nomusa Dube-Ncube, and there's also Mama Mloyi in the position of the secretary and the treasury, I think. But also, again, the coming back of Mama Sandile Zungu. The Youth League is very, very strong to say we are going to contest the step-aside resolution, which was revised by the National Executive Committee to say people who are charged should not ever again stand for elections. The Youth League is against that. They want Sandile Zungu to come back and contest the position of the Treasury. So there's that dynamic, but I also want to bring the dynamic of women's bodies in particular leading and youth bodies leading. We are seeing that contestation strengthening itself as we are heading towards the provincial conference. Young people within the ANC really want to see the leadership being more youthful, and they also would like to see the leadership being more gendered and more feminist in this particular case, regardless, of course, of all the allegations that are hanging over people's names. But what was very interesting was to see also Umahlaba, right, who is coming from Emalahleni, also sort of his name popping up, coming back to want to contest this position as well, which is very interesting because he carries allegations of murder as well against his name, of course, and other allegations of assault recently. So there's those dynamics that are continuing themselves, but I think mainly really the question of a divided ANC, which I do not think, in my view, if you read the atmosphere here, that it is likely to emerge, above what transpired in the local government elections when you look at the character of the voter.
And speaking about allegations hanging over people's head, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa, he's expected to deliver the closing address at the weekend. Of course, amid the controversy relating to the party's step-aside resolution, the Phala Phala farm incident. How is he then likely to be received, especially because KwaZulu-Natal has not been seen as a stronghold of his?
Well, there's an expectation that it's probably going to be booed, It may not be received well in the province for reasons that are now obvious to the public. That the radical economic transformation really has got its stronghold here. So he may not be received well. But I also because of the Phala Phala issue, because of the role of Arthur Fraser, who also seems to be highly aligned with the radical economic transformation agenda within the African National Congress. We know that he's the one that granted former President Jacob Zuma parole, So these are the dynamics. However, he does need to show up his face, mainly because he came in at the time, in the leadership of the African National Congress, where unity is needed, where renewal is needed, and he's the preacher of that. So he needs to then show himself as a leader that can rise above factions, because we have seen him making delivery of speech at the Eastern Cape, and the Eastern Cape is known as his stronghold. And if it doesn't turn up here, it's going to send a very, very bad message and a bad taste, actually, and a bad aura in terms of the divisions within the party. But, so as much as he is not going to be welcomed in a good way, but I think he still needs to come to show himself as the president of the African National Congress, because that's the power that he has still.
Yeah, you mentioned the ANC Youth League being against the step-aside resolution, and perhaps let's expand on how significant it's likely to be, especially also looking at the current chair in the eThekwini region and former eThekwini Mayor, Sandile Zungu. She's tipped to contest for the Treasury position and is now right in the middle of a trial for fraud and corruption charges.
Yeah. It's shocking, Mpo. It's really shocking and disappointing that you could see the Youth League taking that kind of a positionality, especially at a time when the African National Congress is fighting for the battle of its soul, for the survival of its soul as an organization, and the soul really being dependent on the character of the individuals that stand for leadership. So it is troubling, particularly if it comes from young people, because we may say that perhaps what we are seeing is some of the struggles within the National Congress are happening because we have leaders that have largely been in exile, perhaps whose life has been about fighting and liberation and umkhonto wesizwe, and perhaps really not that much geared up towards political management. But if it's young people that are meant to be the future of the African National Congress, who are going to stand up and not really face corruption and look at corruption at its face and deal with it and be seen to be condoning it, becomes a troubling matter around issues of continuity.
Yeah.
You know, around issues of future leadership for the ANC, future strategic direction for the organization. If young people are really also condoning this culture of corruption, where is the ANC going to? So it is highly troubling.
Yeah, very well.
Highly troubling.
We're going to have to leave it there, and thank you for your time and analysis there, speaking to Dr. Fikile Vilakazi, political analyst, of course, speaking in the build-up to the ANC elective conference. Let's now